Awesome. Thank you, Dropbox. That was the delay, trying to get that going. Good afternoon. I know it would be easy to mistake the gentleman seated on stage for the last 5 cover models of GQ's Sexiest Man Alive, but don't worry, you are in the right place. They are, in fact, our speakers for the Creature Designers of Film and TV panel. We have decades of industry experience represented on stage. Our panelists have designed creatures for franchises such as Marvel, DC, Avatar, Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Jurassic Park, and Pirates of the Caribbean, just to name a few. They've worked for directors such as Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, J.J. Abrams, the Russo brothers, and Gore Verbinski. I could honestly go on, but I feel like if I listed all of their credits, it would take the entire time we have for the panel. My name is Zach Berger. I am a creature designer myself, and I will be your moderator today. I am such a huge fan of each and every one of these panelists that if I wasn't up here moderating, I would absolutely be in the audience attending. I'll start with some questions, but try and leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A to my fellow panelists. I'm going to direct questions at specific people, but these are just suggestions so everyone gets a chance to talk and we keep it moving. I would love it if this panel is organic and feels like a conversation, so feel free to jump in if you feel like you have something interesting to add, or pass on a question if you don't have much to say. We're a little pressed for time, so try to keep your answers brief if you can. I know that's hard for a couple of us. Okay, so I'll just start throwing this out to everybody. Maybe we'll just go down the line. We'll start with you, Crash. Give us a very brief 1 to 2 minute introduction to yourself, 1 or 2 creatures that you are most proud of, and at the end, 1 creature that you've always wanted to redesign but haven't gotten a chance to.
Hello, I'm Crash McCreary. I started my career at Stan Winston Studio, and I was there for 10 years, and I lucked out and hit it right when Jurassic, Terminator 2, Edward Scissorhands, Predator 2, God, what else? I mean, it was just the luck of the draw that I happened to be there when those films came to him. And so I designed for all of those films, and then when I left, I did a bunch of freelance work as well, and ended up working with Gore Verbinski on Pirates of the Caribbean, Rango, and Lone Ranger, and just had a great rapport with him and friendship. And I've been at Universal for the last 4 years, trying to reboot some of the Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and all that. And my 2 favorite characters, I think, are Davy Jones.
It's hard to pick.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's gotta, my favorite character of yours has got to be the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. I mean, that's why I got into this, was because of Crash's designs.
Yeah, it was just a dinosaur though.
just one of the most iconic designs in film history.
I really liked the relic, even though this is CG was just kind of coming into fashion, and we built the suit for the relic, and it didn't work at all. And that was an example of where the design looked really cool, but I did a horrible job in translating that to having a person inside it. So they had to suspend him, and we had all these issues, and eventually they did some CG stuff. So I guess the best and the worst of it was that. So, and what was the last part of the question?
You're fine.
Done, yeah,
we're gonna move on for the interest of time. Luca, tell us about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Luca Nemolato. I'm an Italian concept artist.
If you couldn't tell.
Couldn't tell, yeah. So very briefly, I started fine art back in Italy, but when I was 19, I discovered Lord of the Rings and the movies, and the extra DVDs really showed me that there was a job of people designing creatures and characters for movies, and there was nothing like that in Italy. So I realized after art high school that I had to move to America to do this job. Did some courses at Norman School, and from there I was able to get an internship back in the day at the Aaron Sims company. And from there I really just started my career, and I was able to work in VFX, design studios, practical effects, some video games. And I would say one of the projects I was most proud of, it was actually the one that was most collaborative, and it was The Shape of Water, because we worked on the creature. But I only did the viz dev. There was people sculpting the design, so it was a very, very collaborative project. And another one recently has become the Fat Dragon from Dungeons and Dragons.
I love that design.
Because I didn't believe in it either. When they asked me to do it and I read the script, I wanted to do one of the sexy dragons like Konstantin Sekaris does. And I ended up with like, no, we need it fat, it can't fly. But then it became fun, and it became like, people loved it, and the movie was funny, and now it became one of my most favorite one.
With that, let's go to the sexy dragon man himself. His dragons match his own workout regimen.
Hello. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Let's see here. How I got started. Not getting an award. No. I got into practical effects right out of Art Center College of Design. Had a 15-year career learning from all the best practical effects wizards. That was my foundation, and then worked on various projects in practical effects, stemming from Stan Winston, Rick Baker, Steve Johnson as effects. So I was lucky enough to have that as my background. Fast forwarding now to modern times with CGI and everything, having that foundation and having that transition, working on House of the Dragons, it's important to be able to have that foundation of things being able to have a functionality, and then bringing it into the CG world, working with vendors and texturing artists and rigging and all that helps a lot as well. Favorite creatures, House of Dragons, Avatar, Way of the Water, got to work with Zach Berger, and proud to be able to say we worked on PyCon together. That's a major thing on my sort of list. So yeah, there's more. But as far as like designing a creature or character that I haven't, that's tough. I did design Hyde years ago for a movie called League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I would love to revisit that character again.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
All right, Jared, I feel like it would be quicker to list what you haven't worked on. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, okay, brief introduction, because that's what it says on the list. So, my name's Jared Morantz. I've been working in the film, game, and television industries for like 20 years now, which goes by really fast, surprisingly. Let's see. Creatures that I'm the most proud of. I'm pretty proud of the work that I was able to do on Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. So I got to do a bunch of stuff on that, and that was incredible because I was at Marvel Visual Development and I was surrounded by just phenomenal artists. So every day I was pushing myself and I was looking around at artists who were better than me, and I was just by association getting better. You know, aside from that, I really enjoyed working on Zack Snyder's Justice League and doing a bunch of DC bad guys. I love DC, and you know they were all kind of like monstery, so that was a blast. If I had the opportunity to design something I haven't designed yet, nothing comes to mind at the moment. Maybe a really cool vampire would be cool. I don't think I've done a cool vampire.
I was going to say, you just got to work on the Alien franchise. That was going to be my answer. I haven't touched that one yet. That's super cool.
Yes, I got to work on something that it was awesome. It got cut out of the movie, but they let me post it. But to just have the honor to touch that work and play in like the Giger Playground, which you're very familiar with, was great. If I could do it again and it ended up on screen, there you go.
There you go.
That's what I'd like to do. Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Neville, last but certainly not least.
Neville Page. My background educationally was at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and I studied industrial design. So that's kind of how my career started, was doing a lot of medical products. So things that were mobility devices, whether it be walkers, oxygen therapy, did a lot of wheelchairs, which ironically, with my experience working with James Cameron on Avatar, the first one, we had discussed the need for a wheelchair. And I had 8 years of experience with occupational therapists, physical therapists, and the community of disabled people. So I knew what it needed to be conceptually. So that was what ended up in the film, was actually one of the wheelchairs, strangely enough. Even though I'm a creature designer, I'm probably best known for that. Fortunate to have stumbled onto it, again, designing as an industrial designer the vehicles for Men in Black: The Ride in Florida, and having those be ADA, American Disabilities Act, accessible. So we were brought on, myself and Scott Robertson, if you've heard of him, he's a brilliant concept designer, and we designed the vehicle, and I sort of begged them shamelessly that I would love to design some of the creatures for the ride, and they were foolish enough to allow that, but smart enough to say that you're going to need extra help because there's a lot of creatures to design. So they brought to me Carlos Huante, Jordu Shell, James Cagle, Brian Wade, Rob Freitas. It was the top tier practical guys at the time. Sorry, I don't know if I should yell or use the mic.
Close to the mouth. They told us to eat the mics.
Right, eat the mic. So that, much like Jared's story of learning from the best, I was by osmosis becoming a creature designer, and as best as I could be. But it was an amazing education, one that I didn't get from Art Center because I was learning how to manufacture toys and wheelchairs. So creatures I'm proud of the most, the experience, it's different what I've designed and what I've worked on that I'm proud of. I really enjoyed working on J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. I do like the big red creature, quite frankly. That was fun. And his Super 8 creature was a blast. Painful, but a blast. I would like to go back and redesign all of my work. But somebody else's work, Creature from the Black Lagoon, is an appealing one. I don't know what I could bring to the table,
answer.
but it would be fun to do in the privacy of my own home without the scrutiny of the people that know it best. It's always risky when you start playing with something that's classic.
Okay, we're going to get to our first question for a couple panelists. Luca and Constantine, how did you get started? How did you break in? And any advice on, fresh up-and-comers who want to be sitting on stage smelling my farts?
Luckily, I can smell.
Yeah, Luke and I had Indian food for for lunch.
Good
I think
choice.
that's why Crash is sitting down here. So yeah, any advice? How did you get started? Advice for people getting started.
I can answer that. Sorry. As mentioned before, I started in practical effects. Prior to that, right after I graduated Art Center College of Design, I had a portfolio of just ideas and concepts that I accumulated through my time at Art Center while actually Crash was teaching there. And he was a major part in my inspiration of actually knowing I can make this as a career. And so then I oftentimes would sneak into his class in the back and just see him teaching, talk about creature design and whatnot. And then, I took a class a couple of semesters later. He had left because he got busy on other projects. And so I just took some classes just to build my portfolio. After I graduated, the only studio I knew of was a studio out in Chatsworth, and I just sent them my work, and they called me and went in.
See, it's just that easy.
No.
You just send them your work, and then they call you.
It actually wasn't that easy, no. And there were times I actually took my portfolio and just would go and knock at studios. Now, this is back in 1998 before all the accessibility that you have now online. And so these days, you have way more accessible. You can put your portfolio online. You can just email people, send them, just do a mass email and just send your stuff out there in hopes that they'll take a look at it. But that's how I broke in that respect.
Luca, anything to add?
I couldn't go to Chatsworth. No, I had another issue because I was on the other side of the planet in a country where they don't do
Small
this job.
issue.
A small issue. No, it was insane how I discovered. So I went to fine art school in Italy, but I wasn't happy there. The teachers were just teachers. That was my issue. I wanted to be a classical painter like you do in Italy, but my painting teacher, never sold a painting in her life. So it was hard to learn from her how to become a painter that can sell paintings. And one summer I got really frustrated, and that finally we had more internet in our house, so I could search the web, and I found the Normal School of Visual Effects. And at the time, you could buy their DVDs. So thanks to my father, we were able to access those DVDs in various ways. And I spent the entire summer just learning English and learning things I wasn't learning at school. And that's how I kind of like formed the idea. I was 19 at the time, 18, 19. And at the time I formed the idea, I was like, I have to go there. Because some things I wasn't able to really learn. I was learning Maya, ZBrush, like random things. I didn't know precisely what I wanted to do. So that's where the idea formed. Let me go to Los Angeles, let me do some courses. And I took a class with the gentleman right here, Jared Morantz, his creature design course. And that was like, that's when I understood, like, I want to be doing this, and creature was my love. I knew that before, but I couldn't put it to words, you know? And thanks to him, and also thanks to Francisco Corvino up here front, they were working at their own Sims company, sort of. And I was working on my portfolio to try to present it there, try to get an internship, and that's how I ended up starting. I presented some of my work, I got lucky enough to be there for an internship, and then from there, my career started. If I had to give an advice, it's tough because nowadays we're dealing more with a globalized world. I don't know if I'll suggest somebody to have to come all the way to America from Europe or anywhere else, because now everything is so online. In the past, it has helped me more. I don't know if I can say like, oh, that will help now. You have to move. You know, I don't think you're forced to move, but definitely you want to go to a city that is big enough to have different talent because you want to learn from people. So definitely take some classes somewhere where the teachers are not just teachers, but are professionals. And I think there is some of those in Europe for sure. And that will start you with a little, that will give you a little approach to the professional life. And hopefully those professionals will help you get in.
That's actually really good advice. I think another thing that like you touched on and that Jared touched on, and I think Constantine as well, is like, and I guess everybody on stage, like you guys have, if I'm giving a little bit of advice, you guys have like feelers out in multiple industries, like you kind of bounce around, so then when one is a little dry, you kind of have a couple backups, right? And so like you work in games, you work in film, you know, and a lot of you guys, you know, do tabletop stuff and other illustrations. So I think that would be my 2 cents. So next question, this will go to Neville, Jared, and Luca. So everybody up here has been lucky enough to have had a lot of success designing creatures for a living, but if you could go back in time, what is something you would do differently in regards to your career? Let's start with Neville.
I would start what I'm doing now earlier, which is from Star Wars as a child, that motivated me to be involved. But I thought that I wanted to be wearing the costumes on the sets because I wanted to be Luke Skywalker, you know, as much as one could. So I thought I need to be an actor then. So I came out to California from Chicago, studied acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and became an actor, an unsuccessful one. I was a successful waiter. And I found it very frustrating, and then I realized I don't want to be in front of the camera, I want to be behind the camera. So I went to Art Center and began that, but then I realized what I really wanted to do was be a writer-director. But that was something that was just it was unimaginable to think of myself being in the film industry at all. But to say, well, I want to be a writer and director now, was just an impossibility. I didn't come from a family of privilege, so the only thing I thought I could do, Dad was a drummer, Mother was a dancer, I could be an actor, and I couldn't. So I would have loved to have had the courage, perhaps, and the wherewithal to have studied, perhaps properly, directing and writing, only because it's something that I wish I could have began earlier, but having spoken to a number of writers and people like J.J. Abrams and having the great fortune of picking their brain, the one thing that's been comforting to have been so delayed in that is I don't think I would have been ready, particularly in writing, to tell stories. My brain, I'm not there yet, and I will continue to learn, but my brain and my experience in life is now of greater value to storytelling. Whereas before, I would have been telling stories that were maybe a touch less useful to society. And that's kind of my goal personally, is I want to tell stories that are of value to the world in some capacity, beyond entertainment.
Jared, what's something you would have done differently? Hard question.
Yeah, there are a few things I do differently. My career as a concept artist and creature designer is entirely incidental. Like for as long as I could remember, I was obsessed with drawing and sculpting monsters and characters, and I had a very hard time in school because I just could not stop thinking creatively, and it was always more interesting than whatever they were trying to teach me. So when I ended up with a design portfolio coming out of Art Center, it was just filled with my own stuff, and that's what I was always very passionate about, telling my own stories. And that portfolio filled with original work gave me all of these incredible opportunities. And I love being a creature designer. I love these projects that I've had the honor to be a part of, and I've also been incredibly fortunate to work with so many amazing artists that have inspired me over the years, so I wouldn't quite give that up. But if I could do it over again, I'd probably go to film school, and I would probably aggressively go put all of my effort into getting my own things off of the ground instead of spending every free moment I have currently doing that, because it is probably the most artistically fulfilling thing I've ever experienced. And I've got to work on some great stuff, but when it comes to writing and designing my own worlds and being in that mindset, nothing is more fulfilling.
I'm starting to notice a trend in these answers. Luca, what's something you would have done differently in your career?
I don't know if in my career, but I was saying in the learning part, like I wish I didn't have to waste those 5 years of high school, in art high school in Italy, because I didn't really need that diploma, and I was just waiting to finish to come here and really learn things, or go out at night to learn from the DVDs. So I wish I didn't have to wait 5 years to do that, and it would have been easier to just start my career sooner.
Luca is the youngest person up here, by the way.
We're getting comments from the peanut gallery down here. So let's start with Crash. Give us a war story from your career. You've worked with some very big name directors and actors on some very big name projects. Do you have any fun anecdotes you think the audience would like to hear about? I'd love to hear about, I think you told one on another panel we did about drying off a wet T-Rex on the film stage.
Yeah, I witnessed that. I wasn't really a part of it, but I have a different story.
Sure, go for it. Ignore me.
This was after I had left Stan's and was freelancing, and my name was kind of getting sent around to directors, and my agent got a call from Night Shyamalan, and he was working on this film called The Village, and they were having trouble with the design of the character, and asked if I would fly out, meet with him, and do some sketches. I said, "Oh, great, yeah, I love Night Shyamalan, that'd be awesome." So I got on a plane and landed in New York, Philadelphia. I want to say it was at least 11:30 at night, or maybe even midnight, and I thought I'd just go to the hotel room and crash and see him the next day. And there was a guy waiting there to take me to set. And he goes, I go, "Are you taking me to the hotel?" And he said, "No, we're going to go to set and you're going to meet Night." I'm like, "It's a night shoot," so he's up and shooting. I said, "Oh, okay, great. So I'll meet with him, and then I can go home and sleep because I'm exhausted at this point." And so I get there, and it's pouring rain, like torrential. I don't know if you've ever been to Philadelphia when it rains, but it was just insane. And it's out in the middle of the woods. And so they take me to this little trailer that's no bigger than this couch. And it's a bed. It's just for like actors to go crash and just kind of rest up or whatever. So I'm sitting in there, and it's just, this rain is like crashing down. And someone finally comes in around 2 o'clock and says, "Hey, Knight, we'll meet now." I'm like, "Oh, great." So I go and meet him. It's really nice. It's like, "Hey, how's it going? And this is cool. And I'm having trouble with the design. And I just want you to try some new things." And I went, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I can handle that." And he goes, "Great. Well, I'm taking a break in 2 hours. So why don't you go in that trailer and get some work done and come back, and we'll see what you got." And it's like, that is not how I work at all. I go into my room, I disappear for a week, I emerge with something that, I can like sweat over and, contemplate. And so I happened to have a drawing pad with me, and my feet were against the wall. I was sitting on the thing, my feet were against, that's how small it was, pouring rain, and I'm just sketching this thing. And as kind of awful as it sounds, it was probably the most romantic experience I've ever had working on a film. It's Night Shyamalan. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to churn something out, and I've got no choice but to do it. And getting outside of your comfort zone is so important, because it really forces you to kind of dig deep and find what you're best at, find your best qualities, and also kind of push you too. And you realize you don't have to have a completely finished piece, to impress someone. So I had like 6 sketches. I finally meet with Knight, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, these are great. These are awesome. Can you do some color?" And I go, Yeah. Can I go to sleep? That would be awesome. So anyway, it worked out, and I got these designs done. But it was just one of those experiences that really sat with me for a long time, where you're actually in the element, and it was just really cool. So that's all I got.
Neville, let's hear one of yours. I feel like I've heard on like some of the DVD extras you showed Sir Ridley Scott like some reference of some mole genitalia or something.
That's pretty much every director I work with.
Okay.
That's my go-to. But you can't help, if you're working on a Alien franchise, you're going to be showing genitalia, at least things that you may think it's genitalia. But that's not my story.
I tried again.
No, I'll tell you that one privately. A funny one for me was the first Avatar. Everyone knows that James Cameron is a very demanding director, and it's why he gets the work done that he does. Not everyone knows how demanding he can be from personal experience, but in the art department, which was now at the Howard Hughes facility, which is this giant building where they built the Spruce Goose. And there's kind of this mezzanine that's closed off with glass. So you could look, the art department was up there, and you could look down at where the performance capture was occurring. And so Jim was down there. We've got various people dressed in the suits with the dots and all that stuff. So every now and then, John Lando would he was the producer, he would call us down for a presentation. "Jim's ready for you. Come on down." So this is one of those moments where I had to grab my prints and my drawings and run down there. And everyone's curious, because Jim was not in a good mood that day, how it's going to go. So I go down, and it's myself and Jim and the stunt coordinator talking about, they're talking about it, how you can strangle and kill a viper wolf. And Jim was saying, well, you can't just strangle them because they have these perforations in the neck, and so there's nothing that you can do to their throat. Jim calls me over. He says, "Neville, come here. I want to show the stunt coordinator how you would do it." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm standing in front of Jim. He puts his arm around my neck, and he pulls me to the ground, and I'm laying on top of Jim. He arches his back, and he starts to choke me out. And I'm like this, looking up at the art department, and they're all like, his crit's going really fucking bad. Jim explained to the stunt coordinator that, yeah, that's how you would choke out a viper. And I'm thinking, I am not going to tell them what happened. It's like, guys, just be careful, man. Cross your T's and dot your I's and do everything right. But it was very, very funny because people were not thinking, oh, that can't be a bad crit. They were thinking, Jesus, what did he just show him? Anyhow, Jim's a nice guy.
Okay. Constantine.
I can't follow that.
No.
I can't follow that up.
No one's topping that.
Talk about genitalia.
Yeah.
Zach is most curious.
Constantine, you've worked in both, and several of us up here have worked in both practical and now, on fully CG characters. What is and you've sort of made a pretty great transition between those two worlds. What is the biggest difference in how you work and how you approach designing for both of those?
Well, back in the day, from the practical standpoint, I sculpted in oil-based clay. And these days, now I do everything digitally in ZBrush. That's one. Also, when building for a practical creature, as we all know here, because we've all worked in practical effects, how are you going to build it? Who's puppeteering it? Is it a guy in a suit? It just depends on the design. Is it a hybrid between practical and then digital, either erasing or augmentation? When dealing with a full CG creature character, it's easier in execution in that respect. It needs to just live and look like it's tangible, part of the scene. So those are the differences in regards to designing something practical versus something completely fully CGI. You have a little bit more, it's more forgiving with digital, just as long as I think there's parameters. Sometimes younger designers tend to, because it's digital, tend to take it to a place where if you lose the audience and it's something so outlandish, I feel in that respect, you kind of lose that connectivity. Whereas I really, even now with CG creatures, I really try and have something there that the viewer can relate to.
Yeah, and I think you can see it in your work. It's like, I can see that background that you have of like, you've designed the man in suit, you've designed like, more of the practical makeup stuff, and then even when you're doing a CG character, there's that level of sort of reality and groundedness to it that I think really elevates it. Jared, I know you've done a little bit of both, and you do a lot of practical, designs for practical costumes now. Any difference between a fully CG result?
Well, it's always based on the limitations. Every assignment has a limitation, and I've noticed as a designer, we can get there faster if we essentially just embrace those limitations. So if it's an actor, that, if it's a practical makeup, you can only go as far as, maybe a couple of inches away from his face or his silhouette before things start to, wiggle. All of that information when working practically makes essentially you a better designer of CG characters, because the bottom line is when you do a CG character, the majority of the time it's going to be a CG character on screen with an actor with a point of reference. So after spending so much time designing in the real world, you're more adept at creating a believable CG character because you're hyper aware of physics and anatomy, and you have to create something that you believe could exist for real in that space. So they are connected, and you can look at those limitations with either if you're working with a real actor, a real performer, or a CG character, and you can actually use those to your advantage as a designer. So they kind of feed off of each other.
Crash. let's hear your take on designing for practical versus designing for CG, because I know you've done a lot of both.
Well, I agree with everything that everyone's been saying. I think Davy Jones was a good example of when I designed Davy Jones, it wasn't really clear that everything was going to be completely CG, and so at the very least, we were going to use the actor's eyes. And as soon as we found out who the actor was, I found images of him, and if you get that wrong and you design something that looks really cool, but then when they put a makeup on him and it doesn't look right, it's because you had the eyes too wide or the mouth was too low. So I was really strictly following the proportions of the actor, and it ended up that they replaced the eyes with CG. It was insane. But with all of that stuff around Davy Jones, it's really easy for the eyes to kind of feel small and kind of, pinched. So whenever I approach anything, like Zach said, keeping it grounded and keeping it real is probably, I almost disagree that it's easier doing CG characters because you can do whatever you want. And to me, that's terrifying. I like having something to kind of like ground it and to work with first and then kind of go from there. And the great thing about CG now, it looks so good. And my favorite is when it's just an augmentation of something that's actually there. I find a lot of directors wanting a practical character on set because the CG thing just got so out of control, that they would just be, here's a ball, here's the guy, this is trying to kill you, it's running after you. And as opposed to having,
Very
like on
scary,
Jurassic,
full.
when we had the full dinosaurs there, the actors reacted to it like, they were scary. They were scary. So I find that a lot of directors, especially in the lower budget realm, really wanting to have like something physical on set for the actors to react to.
I think we're going to have to call it there. We're being told to wrap it. But thank you so much for coming, and appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.